This is WOMM LP operating out of Burlington, Vermont, 105.9 The Radiator. It's The Rocket Shop. I'm your host, Tom Proctor, and with me tonight is a Burlington musical legend, Tom Pearo. Hello.
Hello, Tom. It's good to see you again.
Yeah, good to see you. Really, really glad to have you back in the studio. We're just talking on air before. I think the last time you came in was a couple of years ago. So it's nice to see you again.
Yeah, likewise. Really nice. First time back performing in this new space. And if I do say so myself, it's quite vibey in here.
Yeah, it's definitely got a certain, I don't know, say je ne sais quoi. We always like kicking off with a song. So what have you got for us?
I got a brand new song. I think I've only performed it live once. This tune is actually about a trick to remember things. So I don't know if you're familiar, there is a kind of a strategy if you're trying to remember something where you put it in a specific location in your mind, and it's called Memory Palace. That's what the song is called.
Tom Pearo there with Memory Palace. Well, gorgeous song to start us off with. I guess the first thing that comes to mind is, as a ambient musician, how do you name the tracks you're creating? There's obviously no lyrics. You're evoking an idea or a theme or an emotion with what you're creating. So how do you then make that into like why Memory Palace, for instance?
Yeah, so that's a great question. It's interesting. I think a lot of people hear me as an instrumental artist, and I don't actually get an opportunity to tell the story behind a lot of these songs. A lot of musicians consider themselves storytellers. I don't consider myself a storyteller. I am a painter, and I paint landscapes using my guitar and some of these effects as a brush. So, I'm creating this palace for you and the listener to walk into and make your own story in there. Now, this song does have a little bit more of a definitive connection to Memory Palace. If you might have noticed, the melody line is quite long. So I actually applied the Memory Palace trick to the melody line so I could remember it. It extends something over like 32 bars. So it's quite a long melody line. So I've put it in a little place in my mind so I can remember it. So
fantastic. Funny you should say that you're a painter, because that's something that kind of came to mind as you were playing. As you're layering on these sounds, that's the image that was coming in my head. You're evoking, and I was thinking about it as you're playing, and it's more of a Renaissance artist rather than, say, like a contemporary artist. There doesn't seem to be a lot of room for change within the song itself. It seems like very deliberate. Everything is put in a very, very deliberate place. It's not like a jam band, if you will, where you're kind of making up on the spot. Do you have space for kind of innovation in that song, or are you very exact in terms of where you place the sounds and layering the tracks?
It's interesting, again, that you pick up on the fact that these songs, while they sound very ambient and immersive, they are highly structured. I would say in that tune, there was a section, maybe the last couple minutes, where it's not explicitly written exactly what I'm playing. But for sure, everything that I do uses a loop. And the way that those pieces fit together, there's only one piece that fits in a puzzle slot. And so these songs are, I'd say, 80%, 85% structured. And even the improvisation is kind of written in. Like, I know what sections I can improv in. So there's almost freedom and improvisation that's written into the form of these tunes. So,
do you purposely hold space then for that innovation in these songs? Is there some songs where you're like very strict and you are going to do it exactly right 100%, and then some songs are like, I'm going to go a bit wild on this one?
Yeah, absolutely. Each song has a form, and sometimes in those forms there is a room for improvisation, and oftentimes there's not. So yeah, I'd say it definitely varies song to song, and I like the songs to remain living, so I'm never afraid to go off script. If I am feeling like the room wants a certain energy, then the form can get put aside, thrown to the wind, and we're going to just follow the vibe that everyone's on. But it gives me a really solid launching pad, and it's a structure, right? Like, I'm trying to take this emotional trip to like the outermost reaches or the innermost reaches. And to do that, I can't just start from scratch. So I rely heavily on a lot of this structure that I've built over the past decade to take us there, right?
You're mentioning you kind of play to the room that you're in. So you're a live musician, really. Obviously, you got tracks on Spotify, and you can go out and buy you on vinyl and whatnot. But I guess it's a leading question, but would you consider yourself, in order to get the full experience, is it something that you have to come and see rather than listen to on something that's already pre-made?
Hmm. You know, it's funny. I'm reading a book by David Byrne right now. It's called How Music Works. It's excellent. It's one of the best books, so informative. He breaks down almost every detail of his music career, from his finances to how he developed a scene at CBGB's. Amazing. And he talks a lot about recorded music and its role in kind of the history and the pedigree of musicians. And, I do think of myself as a recording artist. I really do love making recordings. But especially over the past 2 years, I've realized how much I've really missed performing live. And it is a totally different thing where I'm trying to really connect and really have this heartfelt, genuine connection with the audience. And that's something where, if you listen to my recordings, it's more of a trip for you to go inside. So I love them both. I love them both. But yeah, I really do strive to make the live shows similar so it's recognizable, right? I have a sound, and that's like my strong points. I have tons of weak points, but one of them is I have my own sound. I think you can tell that's Tom Pearo from a mile away. Am I the best blues guitar player? No. Am I the best guitar player? Definitely not. But I've crafted that. So I want to make sure that my audience knows what they're getting into and they can expect to hear familiar sounds. But I don't want it to sound just like the record. It can't. So yeah, I mean, long answer to a short question, but
So, as you said, you'd missed playing live. I'm assuming this is during COVID, locked away like everyone else. Probably, I'd imagine actually maybe suited you down to the ground initially, being the sort of artist that you are. But post COVID, you had that kind of drive to go out and play in front of everyone again. We were talking just a little bit before with two band members. So tell us a little bit about how that experience has been for you as we came out of it and had this kind of summer of collaboration, which has been really quite nice to see.
yeah, I mean, you're pretty spot on. Like, COVID actually did suit my personality in terms of a mad scientist, wizard locked away in the castle, working on these intricate patterns, right? So that was not, terrible, but it was incredibly difficult as well, as everyone knows. For like the first 8 months, I think many musicians I talked to, you're like, oh, we have all this free time. I'm going to record 6 albums, but the artistic well was just dry. I don't think I played guitar for the first like 5 months, 4 months maybe. It just wasn't, I wasn't in the right headspace to do that. And it was right around the turn of the year when 2021 came around. 2 bandmates of mine, Luke Autry and Dave DeCristo, just excellent human beings, incredibly fortunate to have these 2 gentlemen in my life. We were like, okay, we're ready to start rehearsing again. And I'm not going to spoil too much, but we've been rehearsing pretty much for the past year. We recorded an album that we haven't really told anyone about. It's totally recorded. It's the best music all 3 of us have ever played, unquestionably. And we broke through to another level. This band, you're going to hear a familiar sound, but we've never sounded like we do now. So that's just making me be like, yeah, I just can't wait.
Could you tell me any more? I mean, what's the plan going forward with this?
Well, we're going to be trying to perform throughout the Northeast over the winter and next year as well. So probably branch out into a couple different cities. Portland, Maine is one of them. I want to reach out to New York. I have lots of friends in the city there. And we're gotten to the point where all of our rehearsals, we've been rehearsing so much this year and putting in so much work that we should just turn those into live shows in my head. Like, why we don't need to rehearse anymore. Let's just play music every week. We are like prime right now. So yeah, I want to bring the band, as much as possible. I'm not going to saturate the local market. I'd like to have a show every 4 to 6 weeks in Burlington, but I really want to try to build little scenes in other cities in the Northeast, kind of in preparation for a larger tour next year.
Fantastic. What was it? What was the moment when you realized the three of you had created something new, something extra? Especially all three of you being very talented and experienced musicians. To get to another level seems like quite a special thing. What was that kind of moment?
Yeah, I actually remember it like very clearly. It was like the third week of January, and we had started rehearsing every week in Luke's studio, which is actually right across the hall from here. So I love this building, is just vibes for me. And I remember that third week after our rehearsal, I was like, I wish we had recorded that. Like I noticed that something was happening here. And as a musician, and I've heard this from some other musicians too, it's all about like these plateaus where like for years I'll feel like I'm at the same level of guitar, and then one day I will peak and level up. And that happened with this band big time, and I noticed it in that third week. And we were lucky enough to be able to transition our rehearsals into an amazing studio space and take over a studio for essentially like 2.5 months. I think we spent like 3 weeks just setting up the drums. So, needless to say, the record, and we caught the magic as it was happening. It was like we were writing new songs, and I was like, man, I wish that was recorded. And we had the opportunity next week, got in the studio. And this is actually the first album that I've recorded. We recorded it live. 3 people in a room, no overdubs, completely live. And you listen back, and it's like normally when you record stuff live, it's like, oh, mistake. And I'm just like, there's not many mistakes, if any.
That's pretty incredible considering all three of you are very much audiophiles and very particular about the music you play.
Yeah, that's true.
I've got 1,000 more questions, but I'm going to pause for a second and ask you to play another track. So what you got for us?
Cool. This next track is called I Wish You Well. And to give you, you've been so generous to give me an opportunity to share what these tracks are about. This track is about having a friend who's very close to you, who's going in a path that you cannot follow, and about not approaching them with animosity or fear or anger, but just wishing them well on their path as your paths diverge. So it's called I Wish You Well.
Tom Pearo there with "I Wish You Well." Another great track. Any particular inspiration for that? Was there a moment in your life in the past year or so that kind of brought you to creating this song?
Well, yeah, that's definitely a specific moment, a pretty deep cut there for me. And I think this, probably pretty relatable. The pandemic has certainly brought lots of different feelings and opinions and beliefs to the surface, right, for a lot of people. And I just noticed, I had some friends, family members even that, are headed down a path that, I just wasn't able to follow. And instead of getting angry at them, why don't you believe what I believe? I don't agree. It's wrong. It's right. I did a lot of thinking about right and wrong, beliefs, and I always really like to think about that stuff in general. And just deciding to not let fear and anger dominate my thoughts, but instead opening my heart to them, saying, hey, this is not a path I can follow you down, but I still wish you well, man. Like, still have love at my heart for you, so.
I feel a lot of people who listen to your music is in a place of meditation. It's the sort of track that I would either have in the background when I'm either, trying to create a space in my own house where I can think or feel things. Do you use these songs yourself as a way to meditate on the things that are going on in your own life?
I think quite literally I use music as a form of meditation. It's been the past like maybe 7 or 8 years. I mean, since I really found my sound, where pretty much every time I pick up the guitar, I just stop thinking completely. I'll play there's not a thought that went through my head when I was just performing there. It's just empty. And especially when I perform live, typically I'll do a 2-hour set with almost no breaks. And I started realizing 4 or 5 years ago that literally thoughts are not passing through my head. Like, I'm in what they call a flow state. It's like I'm not thinking about anything. So I use music quite literally. And it's funny that you mentioned specifically meditation, because quite recently I've been describing my music as musical meditations.
Mm-hmm.
It really is kind of what it is. So
Yeah.
Very much literally, I definitely use them as forms of meditation.
Writing it as well, or I can imagine that's quite a complex, maybe even stressful process.
Yeah, so writing the tunes, no. Generally how I write these tunes is they kind of get transmitted. And this is a common thing, I think, amongst musicians, where the tune will just come out. I actually can say this. I never sit down and I'm like, I'm going to write a song. It's always when I pick up my guitar and something just hits me. And frequently the tunes will come out like almost complete. Like the melody's there, the harmony's there. I have to work out the details with the band later, when the drums come in. What bass line should go over this? Should there be an extra chorus? But generally the main idea just gets like directly transmitted and it comes out very quickly. That's almost the case for every song that I, write per se.
You got commissioned to write a song this summer, Love Wave, by the venture capital fund Hula. You want to talk to us a little bit about that? It seems a bit an unusual way that you kind of approach this.
Yes, and this tune was my first real collaboration with other artists. So this tune was kind of a slight departure. I really like working with Hula and working with the Sea Change organization. It's a great cause. It's all about climate change, environmental awareness. Excuse me. And they approached me. They said, "Hey, we're using music from your first album, Headspace. We've used that before. We worked together." They used it to kind of stitch together some videos. And they were like, "People really love the music. Like, we got a lot of comments on it. Like, would you be interested in creating a unique piece?" I said, "Yeah, like that sounds really fun." So, I had to hash out some details, obviously, make sure it worked out for everybody. And I was actually working with an artist in Colchester, a gentleman named Michael Crane, who's a very seasoned recording artist, composer. He's just entrenched in the music industry. Was working in Florida and Chicago for many years with big corporate events. Got sick of all that, and now he writes ambient music in Colchester. You gotta love Vermont. Like, Vermont's full of people like that. And we were actually working on a track together that sounded very underwater. And this event that they commissioned me for was an event about specifically water. So yeah, that song Love Wave is kind of a departure, but I would say that the general core for that song is based around a loop that, again, I kind of just recorded, that was very spontaneous, and I didn't think too much about my parts really at all. Now, how Michael, and we actually ended up working with Will Andrews from Wolverine, who's an incredibly talented artist. I've been aware of him ever since he played with Jaffe Ryder, and he's starting to work with tons of amazing musicians. Did a great single with Sam DuPont, worked with Francesca Blanchard, who's blowing up right now. I think her band is sounding so good. I love where she's headed. And Will is and working with Michael Chorney. And they have a new project, which is like my favorite band. It sounds like everything I love about Bill Frisell. Like, I think they're playing every Thursday at the Bean. I got to make it there tomorrow night for sure. I'm going to try to. Freeway Clyde, I think, is that project. But yeah, so I worked with Will Andrews. He just, I just sent him stems. We live in an age where, you don't have to be in the same room. And this is actually interesting. Will had never met Michael. And they met when we did a little release get together at my house. That was the first time they ever met. We had already released a track together.
Found that a lot over in the post-COVID world, people finally seeing each other behind Zoom in face-to-face, and it was, I had a few meetups where I'd collaborated or worked with someone for well over a year, and finally saw them face-to-face in May, and it was quite a weird experience.
Totally. But yeah, so that project was unique in its, it was really a collaboration. But I would say that, my process didn't really change that much. Again, I kind of provided the bedrock of that tune, and then Michael and Will kind of played over top of it. I did write the melody line at a later date, but I kind of just picked up my guitar and it came out again. So I didn't really get too meticulous with trying to structure things. I mean, I like to be meticulous about structuring stuff, but I'm not so inclined to be like, I'm going to write a song in D minor that's 130 BPM. It's just not my jam. I like it to sound organic and natural and just, connected with this, type of cosmic, wavelength. So as weird as that sounds.
Why was it important for you to use these hydrophones, which I hear you got from a professor, potentially, I think from New Jersey Technological Institute? Why is it important for you to record this underwater?
Well, I wanted to incorporate water into this music, but I wanted to do it in like a very just original, authentic way. I didn't want to just like record raindrops or just like record the water. Like, I've been there and done that. Okay. Like, I've done that like hundreds of times, but that's not where I am right now. So at first I wasn't sold. Like, I didn't have to put water into the song. It already had a very aquatic, immersive atmosphere. It just so happened that a really good friend of mine was coming up for the weekend. His name's Louis Rapkin, another incredibly talented composer. Here's a little secret for everyone listening. If you want to be amazing, surround yourself with amazing people. That's been my mantra. I recognized that when I was like 17 years old. I was like, man, if I surround myself with people that I really look up to, I start doing wicked cool stuff. And I just never left that behind. And so every day I'm just surrounded by people that really inspire me and I look up to them. My bandmates are the perfect example. And it makes me a better person. Brings me up. Lewis is another person like that. So he was coming up for the weekend, and he works with a professor of sound. This professor works in particular with underwater insects and whales. He travels all over the world. Actually, if either of you have read the National Geographic from May 2021, it's all about the sound of whales, and this professor, David Rothenberg, is in there. That's his whole thing. He transcribed the whale sounds and wrote it down in sheet music. And I sent him an email. I was like, thanks for the mics, David. They worked out really cool. And he's like, I'm so interested to hear. I've never thought to do what you did with them. I'm headed out to Siberia to record some crickets or something, but I'll be back in 3 weeks, and I really look forward to listening to the tracks. And I was like, oh, thanks, David. That's great.
There we go. So Ivan May was on the show the other day. One of several musicians over the last 4 years I've been doing this, have name dropped you as a source of inspiration, development, collaboration in their own work. Is developing the musical scene in Burlington something you've aimed to do? Are you doing this with intention, or is this just something that just kind of happens? Because your fingerprints are on a hell of a lot of work that gets made around here.
You know, I think in the past 2 or 3 years, I have felt confident enough as an artist with experience that I am actively looking to encourage and develop talent that I think is just phenomenal. And it wasn't something that, it's kind of a recent thing where I think I felt for a long time, and obviously I'm still working so hard on my sound and my music. But I'm at a point where, yeah, I think that I have resources to share. I have knowledge that I want to share with either, not just the younger generation, but with my contemporaries, especially if there's someone like Iva May who has incredible talent. I mean, her talent, it's just, I've never heard a better voice. Like, I don't think ever. It's incredible. I've, fallen off my chair listening to her. Literally, multiple times. And so when someone like that comes around, another group is Father Figure, a band that I am absolutely in love with. Their sound is so unique for people of that age group to, I sound like an old fart here, but just for young people to be playing music that's that detailed and interesting. I don't know. I just think that they're really, really cool. And I've started, working a little bit with Aaron, just extending the olive branch. Be like, hey, just so you know, I'm on your team. If there's anything I can do to help you out, I'm here for you, So, yeah, it's been a recent thing, but building a scene is huge. And Burlington has, it's gone up and down, but in general, it's not a very competitive city. And I think that's a big reason why you get, one person in their bedroom making music can only do so much. But you start pooling together 10, 15 of the most talented musicians, producers, and artists, you start making some art that the whole world is going to recognize. So
I do feel like we've seen a bit of a shift in recent couple of years with Burlington in terms of the diversity of music. It's not just jam bands and singer-songwriters anymore. It does feel like we are kind of starting to branch out into a lot of different genres with a lot of different talents, which is quite nice. Iva May also mentioned that when she first met you, had a bit of an obsession with making tiny food. Is that something that you still do?
Yeah, when she first met me, I was throwing a series of what have now become legendary parties. It was a summer before I went out on tour, 3-month tour with Abby Morin, and I was just, every weekend I was spending all the money I'd make at Mirabelle's, and I was just buying delicious food, and I was in this obsession with cooking over flame. So I'd be grilling, and I would make these little tiny 9-course bites for everybody, and it would be like 2-3 times a week. I just like spent all my money that summer on like having parties like 2 or 3 times a week with like 20 of my friends, and it was just really fun. I love to cook. Food is very important to me. I found that what you put in your body really dictates at least like my mental clarity. So yeah, that's when me and Iva May first met. Probably had something to do with why, the whole energy and mystique around my legend with her. But that was an epic summer, and definitely shout out to Abby and the whole gang. She now plays with Caroline Rose. She's on tour with her right now. So another incredibly talented bunch of artists there.
Yeah. Well, we've got about time for one more song. So what are you going to play us out with?
All right. Well, we got a special one to play you out with. This next song is called Glow. And it's kind of, the next step once you take the journey of a lifetime to the mountain. You realize that the mountain doesn't even exist. You start to ascend and expand from the center. What do you do next? I think you start glowing. So here it is.
Tom Pearo there playing us out with Glow. Tom, thank you so much for coming in.
Thank you so much for having me, Tom. Always a pleasure, man.
Yeah. I'm really looking forward to this new project, and please come in again when that kicks off, and we can maybe get all three of you in and have the whole performance, or at least some of it.
That would be awesome. Anytime.
Well, that's all we've got time for tonight. This has been, we've got Nick Charik of Western Terrestrials coming in next week, so tune in then. But for now, this has been 105.9 The Radiator, The Rocket Shop. I've been your host, Don Proctor, and good night. Oh, man.